we have our brew. Do you?
Mine is just water. That's what I'm sporting today.
I made some green tea because I felt like being healthy today, so here we go.
I'm the only one with a beer. I was like, I finally feel better. I'm having like my first beer in a week. I'm so excited.
I can pour us some wine.
It's all good. It's a celebration. It's all good.
I got this bottle and it's called Dragonfire and it's got like a dragon eye on it, and we got it from the Fourth Wing release party, and it's gorgeous and it shimmers and everything, but it's too pretty to actually open.
Oh yeah, don't open it. No, it's like a beautiful bottle. Don't ruin it.
I'm gonna forever have this and it'll be great. But for everyone that's on here right now, we are joined by Amy Hutchins. Is it okay to go by your real name or do you want to do your pseudonym?
No, I'm Amy Hutchins, and I have books under both Amy Hutchins and Amelia Hugh.
Perfect.
So it's all good.
You know what? We'll pass it on over to you just to give us a background of yourself and give all of our listeners a background of yourself, and then we'll jump into all the questions that we have for you.
Yeah.
Great. So my name's Amy Hutchins. I'm a theater actor. I've been a professional actor my whole adult life, and I got into audiobook narration during the pandemic when I lost all of my theater jobs. I lost every single hard-earned audition that I booked, gone. So I had been taking classes at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation in 2019, just happened to be taking voiceover classes, setting up my own booth, thinking about audiobook narration in 2019, taking the free classes at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation in their voiceover labs, just happened to do that. Thank goodness. Christmas of 2019, my husband surprised me with some gear and gifted me a closet. That not this beautiful booth. This is a beautiful booth. But at the time, he gifted me a New York City closet, which is a very big deal. And I thought, yeah, I'll do some books in between theater gigs. Then the world ended. My husband's also a theater actor. So we had $0. And I was like, time to figure out how to use this gear and start auditioning. And the rest is history. I've recorded over 70 books. I think I just recorded like my 83rd book. And I'm also still doing theater. Like, I can't announce which show yet, but I'm going out of town. I'm doing a show kind of regionally in June and July, a show I'm really excited about. And then I'm also doing a show in the fall on the New Hampshire-Vermont border at a place called Shaker Bridge Theater. So I'm doing both books and theater, and life is good.
Yeah. I was just about to ask you if you've been able to get back into theater since the world is kind of going again.
Yeah, the theater's kind of like restarted like November, December of 2021 is kind of like when the theaters kind of restarted. And that's kind of when Omicron hit and all of the Christmas shows had to be canceled. And so I was in one of those shows. We made it to opening, and then we had to close a week early because of COVID decimating the cast. And then I also had another show in January through June of 2022, I was booked doing theater, and I would do audiobooks whenever I could in between. But it was so tricky because it still wasn't over yet, So we were still like dealing with testing for COVID every single day, and it was very stressful. But now that it's been a couple of years, everything's relaxed, and I'm really looking forward to returning to the theater again. It wasn't so fun with testing every single day and feeling like, the weight of the show is on my shoulders if I go and have fun. So this is a little different now. So it's going to be more fun.
That's amazing. So I actually found you on TikTok, and it was when you were doing the Blood Weaver narration. And I mean, very late, because you obviously had many more videos before that, but I just instantly got hooked watching you, like just listening to your voice, which sounds creepy to say, but hope you it's because of audiobooks, but just and listening to you switch from like female voice to male voice so flawlessly, and especially since they all had different accents, and then just you could tell how into it you were getting. I just loved it. I texted Jenny, I'm like, just so you know, I'm about to ask her if she wants to be on the podcast. Hopefully she says yes, but I'm like, I just love it. And then I went through all your videos. I'm like, I just love this. And I love that you even give the public the opportunity to see the side of the narration process. And now, because of you, because I follow you, other narrators are popping up, and it's just so cool to see how you all do it in your own different way. So I'm just really excited to have you on here, and that you're even narrating in general, because you do a fantastic job. It is insane. There's no way I could do it. I would be laughing the whole time.
I think we're like, no, hang on, carry on.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been some spicy scenes that I've narrated where I have to pause and like laugh and let it all out or like whatever and then like keep going. I mean, sometimes, or just some funny writing just cracks you up and you just have to let it out and then get back into it. I mean, that happens.
That actually we'll go into our questions now because that is one of them. I was in watching your videos. Sorry if you're gonna have to repeat in yourself from any of the videos that you've done, but since we have listeners from both sides, I saw that you were talking about why you have a pseudonym name. How are you say it?
Yeah,
Sorry.
you got it. Nom de plume.
And it is mostly because, you do have the spicier books or the books that are, above a certain age. How is it reading off the spicy books? Like, how did you have to get into that? Like, do you have to process and like give yourself a moment to slip into that kind of scene, or?
Well, just like any kind of acting, you do have to know like what's the moment before, and that's any acting. Like before you start any scene, you have to know like, well, what just happened? What does this character want? What are the circumstances? What are the stakes? So just like going into a battle scene, going into an intimate scene, there you have to reconnect with like where your character is and what your characters want and what's going on in the story. And it's all based in the text. So, it's really hard to like go from like, your day to day. I'm in New York City. I'm like working in my own apartment. And you can't just sit down and like just start recording and just like you have to kind of go, where am I in the story? What just happened? And you have to kind of read a little previously of what you just recorded the day before, and you have to kind of settle into it. So just like any acting, yeah, you can't just like jump into it. Like you can't just like brush your teeth and just sit down and just go into any kind of scene. So yeah, it's just like any kind of acting. At first, I was a little awkward because I don't always use all of the language that all of my characters use, just like I don't use the dialects that all of my characters use. You have to kind of like, just kind of get comfortable with the language. Yeah. And yeah, that's just kind of how I treat it. It's just kind of another scene like any other. Hopefully it's moving the plot along, because my favorite kind of spicy scenes are ones that aren't just for the sake of entertainment, but they're for this, but maybe they're getting closer in their relationship. It progresses the story. And for me, that's like the whole thing is I'm the storyteller. I'm telling the story from beginning to end. And hopefully every little thing that happens in the book is adding to that story. And yeah.
It's not just filler and fluff and just there to be there.
Right. You can't treat it like that. Like it all has to be there for a reason, right? Like some kind of building block towards something, or a character arc, or something. Yeah. You're always building.
Yeah. I always see, in case anyone doesn't know, if you haven't watched any of her videos, she's got like a little text block at the top that shows the book, and then it says that you mute it for spicy scenes, I believe. And so as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I cannot imagine reading off, especially on TikTok live, like one of those scenes, because just reading on my own, I'm usually like this. And like and I'll start blushing. Like my boyfriend knows when I've started a scene, because I start to sweat, my face gets all red, I just turn into a mess. I'm like, there's no way I could do it on TikTok. There's no way. Well, like right now, I'm like, I can't even talk about it now.
But the microphone is muted, and most of the time they're beautifully written scenes. I've been really lucky to have given books, especially ones that I narrate on TikTok, that are beautifully written, and they really do add to the story. And I'll blush a little bit and I'll act out the characters and the emotion, and but it's just like a battle scene or just like a scene where I'm crying. It's just like emotions come up and you just deal with it and then you move on, because that's my job. Is I'm just kind of like the conduit, I'm just whatever's on the page, I'm just helping you feel it even more.
So since you talked about crying, that leads into one of my other questions with emotions. Let's just stay on the roll of emotions.
Yeah.
I don't want to get the book wrong. The Stars That Call Us Home was one of the books that you had made a video about where you were emotional in it. So with that, is that just something that you have to stop and just let the tears fall and then go back into it? Or does that help kind of portray what you want and you just let the cry come as you record?
Yeah, you have to just kind of ride the wave. As you get the emotion, you want that, because there was dialogue there, and and they're feeling, so the characters can cry and sob. They have to cry and sob intelligibly, like the listener still has to be able to understand what I'm saying. But my difficulty in that scene was, so the characters were crying and sobbing so much, but my third person narration, the narrator can't be like sobbing along because it was third person narration. I didn't want to insert this narrator into the story. The story is between these two people. So it was great that I was so emotional for their dialogue. Oh, but then I had to like somehow turn it off and say lines like a normal human being. And that was so hard when, you know, your throat's constricting and you're crying. It's like, you know, you ride the wave and it's just a hazard of the job. So in first person narration, when it's like written, when you are the character with the dialogue and you are the narration, you can sob through that. And that's okay because it's first person narration. You're that character, you're hurting, you're sobbing, you can cry. It's really hard when it's third person narration. There's a point where it's like, should the narrator really be audibly sobbing?
You gotta disconnect from it. Tiffany says that was a rough scene. We all cried. So I'm assuming you're one of the listeners that Amy has. Yeah, because when I hopped on to Bloodweaver, I saw people like, oh, what chapter are we on when they hopped on and stuff. And I was like, I love this. It's kind of like your own little book club that you're starting too with each book. So it's your own community for each book. And I love that.
That's kind of what it's turned into. And I never expected that in a million years when I started doing it. I thought, well, you know, it'd be good for me to do some live narration on TikTok to have that experience. Maybe it's good exposure for the author. Maybe, you know, who knows what would come of it. Maybe an indie author will see me and think, oh, I want her to narrate my book. I was kind of thinking on those terms, like exposure for the author, maybe an opportunity for other indie authors to maybe want to work with me. I never thought that there'd be these amazing people like Tiffany, like these other people in the comment section who are like, hey, what's the book? When are you reading it? I'm there. Yeah. And what page are we on? Let's follow. If it's on Kindle Unlimited, let's follow along. Hey fam, we're back. Like, let's jump into the story. And that has been the biggest, most wonderful surprise of this whole journey. I just never expected that it would be like, I'm gonna tell this story and we're all gonna experience it together. Like this big virtual book club. I just never thought that would be possible, and it's a lot of fun.
So since you've been doing the TikTok recordings during your narrations, has that kind of changed how you schedule when you do the recordings? Is based on like when you do the lives and stuff? And also, do you do multiple books at once, or do you kind of just try and finish one book at a time?
There was one point where I was trying to do 2 books at the same time. That was when I was doing The Stars That Call Us Home by Trinity Dunn. I was live streaming it on TikTok. And that was a 24-hour-long book that I was trying to squeeze into an already pretty full schedule. And I learned you can't squeeze in a 24-hour-long book. Like, you just can't squeeze that in. So I had said yes to some publishers for some other books. And I thought, I bet I can, during the day, record this one book while I'm recording The Stars That Call Us Home at night. And then I got to a point where I was like, guys, I'm so in this story and the dialects are so specific that I have to finish this story today. And I posted on TikTok, like, I'm not going live tonight. You'll see me tomorrow, because it was just too much to try to keep them both, you know, it was too much. So I prefer to do one story at a time. Now I'm prepping ahead of time, right? So I'll be prepping, you know, the next books that I'm doing while I'm recording something, which is a lot to kind of keep in your brain. So it's too much to be recording 2 stories at once while also prepping.
Yeah.
Too much for me. I like immersing myself in the story and just going on the ride.
Yeah, that's how I am with just reading.
Yeah.
I'm not a multiple book reader because I can't jump from world to world and it grasps me like I want it to.
I am now. I have 5 books right now.
You're crazy.
Different point. And last night I was switching between doing like reviews for our one podcast from Bud and Ash, and then reading ACOTAR. And because I was like, I don't, and then I'm literally within like half an hour, and then I'm switching, doing the dishes, ACOTAR, back to I was like, I got this.
I can't.
I was loving it.
I mean, maybe if it were like a women's fiction and a fantasy, like something so different. But like, I'm prepping 3 fantasies now, and I finished prepping one fantasy that I'm going to record. Tam just said hi in the comments. He's an author. I'm doing his book next, the first week of April. And so I finished prepping his book the other night, and then I just started prepping another fantasy, and it also has a prophecy. And then I started confusing the prophecies, and I was like, no, Amy, you're thinking of Chains of Fate. That's Tam's prophecy. No, like, so it's tricky when it's similar genres. So I like to keep it compartmentalized. Yeah.
We've talked to a couple authors that say something similar is while they're writing, they can't read anything within the same genre that they're writing. And I mean, most of them said it's because they don't want to take anything from that and put it into theirs just, unknowingly. It's just because it's in there. So yeah, it's kind of similar. I'll shut up and let you ask your question.
Okay. One of mine was what got you into narration to begin with, but you covered that with the COVID shutdown. So I'll go with what has been your biggest hurdle so far? I almost sounds like doing multiple books, but I'll let you go.
Wow, biggest hurdle. There was a point before I think the biggest hurdle for me was I was only auditioning on ACX, the Audible Creation Exchange, working with indie authors, and that's kind of how I started finding auditions. And I noticed in the beginning of 2023 that some of the auditions in my price range, because I'm a SAG-AFTRA actor, I charge not exorbitant rates at all. There are people who charge so much more than me, but I charge SAG-AFTRA minimum or slightly more, but depending on the book, but I charge SAG-AFTRA minimum. And I was noticing that those auditions in that range were starting to dry up on ACX. And I was like, wow, my work has really slowed down. And I didn't know what to do or how. I had copious amounts of work, and then suddenly it started to slow down. And I had to figure out what the next steps were. And so for me, I went to a friend of mine who's been doing books forever. She was like, well, Amy, obviously it's time for you to approach producers. Like, you have 50 some books now on Audible. You should now be approaching producers as well. Like, please keep working with your indie authors, but like, you can expand your portfolio if you also introduce yourself to publishers and start to get to know them. And so I went to a conference for the first time in my life. I mean, I'm a theater actor. I don't go to conferences. So I went to the Audiobook Publisher Association's conference in March of 2023. It was not cheap. It was very expensive to go, and there was like a mixer, but there was like the day before the conference was this mixer with so many narrators and people in the publishing world. It was so overwhelming. And then the next day was this conference, and fortunately it was in New York City. It was like 2 blocks from my apartment, but it was all day, all these panels, and there were like 1,000 people there. And I was just like walking around with like my eyes open and my jaw dropped, and I was like, what is this world? So navigating, like, just being introduced to this whole new world, and learning to navigate that was a challenge for me, because I thought, well, people post auditions. I'm an actor, I audition. But you, in this world, you do reach outs, you send emails. It's kind of, you write to people. You say hi and you introduce yourself like in a cold email. And you're like, please, can I audition for you? I would love to narrate your book. Like, I'd love to narrate for your company. Like, it felt awkward for me. I learned it's not awkward. Everyone does it. But that was a big hurdle. Learning how to navigate that after only having worked with indie authors, which is where I felt safe. And then pivoting a little bit and also starting to work with some publishers. And that's been great. So now I work with both indie authors and publishers. But I still love my indie author work. Oh, you guys are so cute. So yeah,
I'm sorry.
that was a big hurdle. Realizing I was at a stage where I needed to start to, I don't want to say level up, because there are indie authors that I work with that I continue to work with. Not everyone decides to go the traditional route. So I'm not trying to poo-poo. I love indie authors, and it's not like one is better than the other. But because of where I was pay-wise, I wasn't taking royalty share books and doing something for like $100 per finished hour. Like, I get my health insurance through SAG-AFTRA now. Like, I need to get paid a certain amount so I can qualify for that, for those benefits for my union. So anyway, sorry, I don't mean to bore everyone talking about conferences.
I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
So in learning to navigate that has been, but there are casting folks, just, in the publisher world, just like there are in theater. So it hasn't been that different. And I'm auditioning with them in the same way that I'm also auditioning for indie authors, although I am getting more direct offers from indie authors now that they're seeing me on TikTok, and they're, you know, I got a direct offer from a publisher, actually, from a producer during a TikTok live.
Yes.
They were like, hey, you're perfect for this book that I'm casting in October. I want to give you a direct offer. How do I reach you? And I was like, I'm in the middle of narrating a chapter, but here's my email.
It's like, everyone hold, pause the live. Let me just get to this.
I know, I was like, I can't turn down work.
So
yeah.
actually with that, I would always have a level of like, I don't know, uncertainty, I guess. How do you know when they're legit and scammers? Like, do you have a specific process that you make people go through? Like, if they want to hire you, they have to go through SAG, or is there like a direct link, or?
Well, I use a paymaster. So
Okay.
that's how it's reported to SAG. So I use a paymaster, which is great. And I do require a deposit. So like if I'm working with an indie author, well, because I need to pay my engineer. So I have to pay my engineer before he gives me the files that I upload to be reviewed. So I always ask for a deposit when the 15-minute sample is approved. I say, great, I'm so glad that you're happy with this sample. I'm going to record the book. Before I record the book, I need a 30% or 50% deposit that covers my audiobook engineer. So I can at least, even if it's a scam and the author is going to run, at least my engineer gets paid. Fortunately, I mean, knock on wood, I've been so lucky and I've worked with fabulous people. I've never had someone just like take the files and run, but that could happen. And I've heard of that happening. So
Knock on wood, though, like.
yeah, I know, right? Knocking on wood.
That actually leads into one of my next questions that I have. But before we do, Lanessia says hi. She's another narrator. So I just
Lanisha is an amazing narrator. We met at APAC 2023 that I was just talking about. I adore her. Everyone should follow her. She's an amazing narrator and very cool person.
Yes, and thank you for all the bunny ears and the things that you've been sending that cracked me up. So with your engineer, because they're editing everything that you are recording, do they have to read the book too to kind of understand if there's a flaw or anything in it, or do they just simply look for audio glitches?
Fortunately, my engineer is proofing and editing at the same time. So making sure that I'm as word perfect as possible. I mean, he's a human being. We don't run it through Positron, which is a system where you can make it word for word, but that's an added expense to run it through Positron and then have him, edit and master it. So before Positron, before that software existed, all proofing was human proofers. And they would occasionally, as long as it made sense, a word here or there could be wrong. And it doesn't really mess up whisper sync unless it's like, it has to be 98% accurate or 99% accurate for whisper sync. And if you're talking about 100,000 words, what's 1% of 100,000 words? I mean, you can have a lot of words wrong and still be whisper sync okay. So he does proof it and edit it at the same time. And then he gives me all of my corrections and I have to redo them. And that's very painful. And then I give them back to him and then he pastes them all in and edits it. And then he masters it and gives it to me chapter by chapter, chapter files that I can then upload to ACX that the author then reviews and off it goes.
Wow.
Yeah, I could not imagine having to do all that myself.
It's amazing.
Recording, editing, everything.
No, I when I first started, I tried, but I would drive myself crazy because I didn't go to school to be an audio engineer. And so I didn't know how to fix mistakes. I mean, I understood basic editing, but I didn't know how to truly master something. I mean, I had a stack that I applied and, I had basic settings that I was supposed to put in, but I'm not an audio engineer. So it was such a huge game changer for me to release all of that and be like, all I have to do is prep and record. And then I hire someone to do everything else. And they're so much faster at it than I am, which means it just frees up all this time for me just to do what I do best,
Right.
which is act. Yeah.
So I had posted a post on Facebook asking, just letting people know that we were going to be doing this interview with you, and if anyone had questions that they wanted us to specifically get answered. And one of our authors that we've done an interview with had a few questions for you, so I figured I would go ahead and those off, because she actually had a really good one, and I want to find it because I have a lot of questions on here. One of them was, have you ever found a storyline error or plot hole while recording? And do you tell the author, or do you just go with it?
Oh yeah. In fact, I did this one series with an author. I did about 10 books out of her 14 book series. And by the end, she had fired her copy editor because she's like, how have you found things that, like, she's like, I pay this copy editor so much money. And she was like, and you have found so many things, like, because, you know, I'm reading and highlighting every word of the manuscript. And I'm like, wait a minute, these characters have gotten confused. Like this is, you know, like typos, plot points, just all these little things. And she's like, do you know how much I paid my copy editor? and at first she was like, maybe it's a fluke. And then by the 10th book, she was like, I'm done.
That's a lot of books to go through too. And
I mean, my job is to like make sense of the story. And if I find a discrepancy, I need to let them know. In fact, even when I was in studio, I was doing a book for Recorded Books, and they were talking about her doing a crossword and for 4 down. And then a couple of pages later, it said 3 down. And I was like, wait, she's still thinking about this clue and it's 4 down. Like, we need to re-record it. And I remember the engineer being like, I mean, that's what it says in the script. And I was like, yeah, but it's wrong. So we need to have both. Like, I understand that you want me to be word perfect, but you need to tell the editors to tell them that this is wrong in the script, like in the manuscript, and it'll probably be corrected and you'll want my correct. Yeah. So it just happens, you know, those things happen, and it's not the author's fault, but, you know, cause like they revise it so many times, and it takes them so long to write it, but I'm just sitting down in a really quiet area, really focused, and just making sense of the whole story. So things like that pop up because I'm highlighting lines of dialogue, I'm underlining words, I'm like really paying attention, you know, to the story and to like the sentence structure, you know, like where to breathe and, you know, making sense of long sentences.
Right. We just did an ARC read for Kingdom of Vines and Silence, and it's a fantasy book. And Ellen Cole Lauren, she asked us, you know, if you find any errors or typos or anything like that, send it to us. So we're just like sending stuff her way, and she's like, thank you so much. She's like, because, you know, with us authors, they have to edit it and revise it so much that they become blind to the words on the page. They don't see anything anymore. And I was like, you know what? I've never really thought about that. But yeah, having to constantly look at the same things that you've written over and over, I could definitely see how easy it would be just to overlook entire sentences or words and stuff.
Absolutely. And I don't want authors to feel bad about it either. They're always like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. And I'm like, what? Do you know how many words you've written in this book?
Yeah.
Like, and this is the only thing I found? Like, don't be embarrassed. Like, I wish I could take that off of them. Like, it's every book, I think almost every book I've ever done has had at least one typo. You know what I mean?
We're all human.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's gonna happen.
And especially like indie authors who can't afford the many, you know, editors and the things. I'm happy to help. So. Yeah,
since you were talking about the SAG minimum and stuff that you charge, do you ever, sorry, you're going to hear my kitten. I don't know if you can hear him. He's talking. He's a talker.
Oh, I have a talker as well. Celia. We think she was an opera singer in a past life. She just kind of sings.
That's him. For indie authors versus, you know, ones that have a big publishing house company behind them, do you ever charge differently for that type of project? Or is it just based on like how many words, how many chapters, stuff like that? Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm always going to take a loss when it comes to working with indie authors, because when I get paid from publishers, there's a base rate that's each house is different. Publishing house or production house has a different rate, but there's a rate, and then on top of that is a 14% or 13.75% that goes towards my pension and health, just on top of that. And anytime I work for an indie author, that that is taken out. That 14% or 13.75% is taken out of my paycheck and sent to SAG-AFTRA. Now, the great thing is that all of my earnings are reported to SAG-AFTRA. So I'm happy with taking the pay cut because I love working with indie authors. And it means that that book that I do with an indie author can be all of my earnings, not just that 14%. All of my earnings are reported. And when you get to a certain number, like $27,000 a year reported to SAG-AFTRA, you qualify for health insurance for an entire year. And both my husband and I are theater actors. So qualifying for health insurance is a big deal because we get it through Actors Equity when we qualify. But when he qualifies, that doesn't mean I qualify. We each have to individually qualify. So I've been on the marketplace, on and off the marketplace so many times. So to qualify for SAG-AFTRA health insurance, it's going to happen for me in July. I just found out that I qualified. Thank you. It's such a big deal. So I take the pay cut. I take it gladly because it means that that book, all of the earnings from that book, like my per finished hour rate, is reported to SAG-AFTRA as going towards what will eventually mean I get health insurance for the year. So it's a pay cut.
Yeah.
But I also love working with indie authors. I feel I enjoy my publisher work. The pay is better. It's less work for me. I don't have to deal with hiring an engineer. It's far less communication. However, I don't get to chat with the author about how do you see this character? What's happening in the next book? Where is this going? So I know this character is really enigmatic. Can you tell me more about this character so that I can, because right now I know that there are secrets, but I need to know how to play this character a little better. Like I can have these conversations with authors that I can't have when I'm working with publishers. I can only communicate with my producers, and some of these producers are amazing and they'll help find answers to things, but I don't get that one-on-one with the author.
I actually have a question about that. So with the authors that you work with, do they give you like a pronunciation list for names or towns, cities, worlds? And then also, do they have to approve your voice for each character that you do, or do you just kind of send a sample and they just say yay or nay and then you go on from there?
Right. So for indie authors through ACX, there's a 15-minute checkpoint that they need to get. And that 15-minute checkpoint, I always say to them, I wonder if Tam Delacour is still on. He's he's the next author that I'm working with. So basically the ACX 15-minute sample, it can be the first 15 minutes of the book. But personally, I think it's best when it's a little bit of the beginning, but then it has as many characters as that author really cares about, so that they can sign off on every single character that they want to. So I like the 15-minute checkpoint to be a little bit of the beginning for pacing and tone, but then I like little snippets of scenes or just character dialogue just so that they can like get ears on their characters, especially if they're going to be like in the second book and the third book. So it can be whatever they want it to be, but I like it to cover all the bases just so I know that they're happy with it. Because once it's after the 15-minute checkpoint, I can't take any redirection. I can make small changes, like words that I've said wrong, maybe one moment of bad acting here and there, you know what I mean? But I can't make any redirection, like major redirection. So the time for redirection is that 15-minute sample. And so I always say to them, like, even if it's little and it's nitpicky and if it's bugging you, say it. Now is the time to say it. Let me know. Let me make those changes. Let me see what I can do to tweak this and make this the best version of your story it can be. Because once it's done, I can't, I mean, I can change it a little bit, but I can't go back and re-record chapters and chunks. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with publishers, most publishers that I've worked with, they don't have a checkpoint like that, and they go off of the audition.
Oh, wow.
Just blind faith.
Or no audition whatsoever. They listened to a retail sample of something and it was a direct offer, and they go, "We trust you."
That's amazing, though. That's amazing.
But that's when I want to talk to the author and be like, tell me a little bit more about this person and this person and this person.
The
you know?
pressure.
I know.
Exactly.
Anytime I do anything crafty related, like I do a lot of book folding and stuff, and I have an order right now, and the woman's like, "I trust your judgment on whatever you want." And it's like gifts for her friends, and I'm like, no. What do your friends like? Like, tell me about them so I have some direction. I'm like, don't just trust me. I need.
Yeah, I like a little direction. I like a little bit of, and now they'll have some notes. Most of the time, there'll be some character notes and some, and you know, like that you can read about the characters that they'll provide you through the producer. And if you do have questions, Lanisha makes a really good point. When you do have questions and you're like, please ask the author about the pronunciations of this, this, and this, sometimes you have to wait a while because you're emailing the producer and then the producer has to email the author. And who knows, that producer is doing a zillion other books. So who knows when that email's, they're going to see my email, reach out to the author. The author is doing other things, probably working on another book. So yeah, it takes a while. Asking about pronunciations, I'm a big fan of MP3s, like voice memos,
Yeah.
because people write things out differently phonetically. Like it's really easy to misinterpret a written out pronunciation of a word. Also, you can't really tell where the stress is in the word when people write it out. So I love it when I always ask for MP3s. I'm like, just send me a voice memo of you going through the whole list, every single character, especially in these fantasy books. I've had 400 words, you know, and it's like, but I need to know. I want the whole thing. I'll annotate it. If it's a Word doc, I'll change out the words and I'll write it out phonetically when I see the character name, so I don't have to even think about it. Like, yeah, it can be kind of crazy with these sci-fi and fantasy books.
I was gonna say, yeah, because you, in one of your videos, you said that fantasy and sci-fi is your favorite genre to narrate, correct?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, fantasy has some tough words, some tough made-up words, so you have no idea how to say it. But in our Facebook group that we have, when we were asking about this, that was one of the questions was, you know, pronunciation list. How do you work with that? Because there's obviously a bunch of fantasy books out there that say it one way, but then you listen to author interviews and they're saying the name a different way than what the audiobook is saying. And it's like, wait.
I know.
Which way?
Okay.
Right now, I don't know.
One of the books that I did, the author said, the only two names I care about are these two names said this way. Everything else is up to you.
What?
My brain exploded. I was like, whoa, don't give me that power. What? And I thought the same thing. What if she's like talking about her book and my names don't match up her names, but she said, no, I only care about these two characters in her whole series. And I was like, well, I'm really hoping I got it right. And then the producer is also like, look, you're not alone. If you're really stuck, use me as a sounding board. Some producers are far more willing to be hands-on. And I've had other producers who are like, just work it out. Or you and your co-narrator can work it out. I'm cool.
My mind would just blow. What do you mean?
I'm like, is it based on a Latin language? Is it based on a Germanic language? Is this based on like, what is the source, the root of this name? Like, how do I even? Yeah.
I need all the background information on this, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like I've been taken over.
No, you're good. Do you have a favorite all-time quote that has stuck with you? Or maybe a book, if a quote's too hard. I don't know, I feel like maybe if a quote stood out for you.
Oh, wow. You know, I'm the kind of actor who I do plays, like I do tons of Shakespeare. And then after learning the whole play and it's in my head, 2 weeks later, it just falls out. Just gone. I wish I were someone who retained that. I do know that the Fallen Flame series by J.M. Miller has the most beautiful dedications. And I love them so much. I asked her, I said, I really would like to include these in the audiobook. And she said, really? Dedications aren't always, I was like, I know, but they're so beautiful. So and I actually made a little video during the, Human Voices Only campaign. I asked her permission. I said, can I just record your dedications from your dedications from each of the 3 books in one video? Cause I just love them so much. And she said, of course. But yeah, they're just beautiful. So I made a little video, or check out her books and you can read her little dedications. But I
just wrote it down too. Amber says, was there one that ever had you falling over laughing?
Yeah, there was this book I did called Four Steps to the Perfect Revenge, a suspense rom-com. I did that one under my own name, Amy Hutchins. I intended it for it to be under my pseudonym, Amelia Hugh, but it was one of the first books I'd done with publishers. I didn't realize that you have to, when they approach you, you have to tell them whether you want your own name or your pseudonym, like right off the bat. You can't wait because they have to put in metadata and all kinds of stuff. And so anyway, it's under my own name. It's a rom-com. It's not that spicy. It's a little spicy. There is a scene in the bathroom that takes place, and that's all I can't talk about it. I can't say why it's funny, but it was so funny. I remember reading it and laughing out loud when I was just when I was like reading it and prepping the book. And my husband was like, "What are you laughing at?" I was like, "This scene, it was a very funny scene." They're like spying, they're hiding. I can't tell you what happens. It's not suitable for
Everyone read that book then.
But yeah, it's Four Steps to the Perfect Revenge. And man, there was a really funny scene in there. And I laughed while I was recording it. I laughed while I was prepping it. It tickles me even now.
I love it. Chris says, how long have you been acting for?
I started acting even in college. Well, I mean, I did theater like in high school, and there was a community theater, like a dinner theater. I grew up in Podunk, middle of nowhere, Maryland, so there wasn't a lot of theater where I grew up, but there was a little dinner theater that I did in high school. I did a production of Gypsy, and I remember there was a review in the Carroll County Times, and it said the reviewer was surprised that I had played 3 parts. They didn't realize I was the same actor. I had played one of the newspaper boys in Gypsy. I played one of the Tory Adorables with like the blonde hair, and I think I played the French maid at the end. And anyway, so I guess my debut was dinner theater in high school. But I got my first professional credits in college. At the Shakespeare, I went to Drew University, and at the time, the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey is an equity theater on the campus. And the Playwrights Theater of New Jersey was also an equity theater on the same campus. So I worked, I got professional credits with both of them when I was in college. And I interned at both places.
Hey, at least you know you did really good if people were like, what, you played all 3 roles? Like, you were real good then. I
remember, I was very proud of that review in the Carroll County Times. I was very proud.
I would be too. So in your day-to-day life and having to get into all of these different characters, do you ever find yourself like falling into the character just in your normal day? Like all of a sudden the character comes out and you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah. I mean, but that's par for the course with acting too. You know, like you're working on a dialect that you really like and it just starts coming out, or a character that you're working on. And it, especially in theater, when it's the same character that you're rehearsing 6 days a week, 8 hours a day. Oh man, when I did A Child's Christmas in Wales, my husband and I were in the same show together. We could not stop speaking in a Welsh accent. We would just driving out to the theater, we would just read signs. Anything we would see, we would just read it in a Welsh accent. It was, it tickled us to no end. I mean, just stupid stuff like that. Yeah.
Chris asked if you wouldn't mind giving a sample of your favorite accent.
Right, so right now, I guess it's like a Scottish accent. I don't know why, but it's really fun just to whip out a Scottish accent. I don't know why. I went to Scotland last year and it was really fun to hear everybody speak. Yeah, Scottish right now, but it just depends on the moment.
I can't do accents at all. At all. You have a built-in one, luckily.
I can't do them on purpose. But if I hurt myself and I stub my toe, it will be a Scottish response. Or when I get angry, it comes out very brummy from back home in Birmingham. So
are you from Birmingham?
I'm from Stratford upon Avon, closer.
Oh.
So yeah, lots of Shakespeare's birthplace. So yeah, lots of it just changes all the time. It kind of, my accent just changes all the time.
But you can do a northern. My next accent that I want to learn is like a northern, like a Yorkshire kind of accent, like Jodie Whittaker's accent. Yeah. That's like the next one I want to learn.
I can't. Naturally, it would probably just come out if I was with those people.
Right.
It starts morphing. But yeah, I can't do it on purpose. I can't try.
I was watching an interview with Millie Bobby Brown, because I guess she's been getting a lot of hate lately because her accent changes. And she's like, it just adapts to whoever I'm around. It changes and I can't help it. She's like, especially being an actor, it's just kind of what happens.
Yeah.
That's so true. I'm obnoxious to travel with. I mean, I do regional theater and I'm stuck in like Wisconsin and I'm like, oh, you know, and I'm like, you know, holy mac. And I go to like down south, like to visit my husband's family and I'm picking it up. I go to the UK, I go to London to see theater. And suddenly I'm like, actually, Michael's like, did you just say actually? And I'm like, it's just dumb. Like you just pick up stuff and it just tickles your brain and yeah.
I love that. That would be so fun. Mine just, I grew up, my dad was from New York. And then I grew up in the country. So I have this weird, non-existent, like any other language accent. And everyone's like, where are you from? And I'm like, literally nowhere. Just New Smyrna, like some beach town in Florida. And people get so confused because half the words sound like I'm from New York and the other ones sound like I'm from redneck country out in the middle of nowhere. I'm like,
well, Florida's like that. You'll hear that. You'll hear like New York, New Jersey, and then you'll be like, am I in the deep south? Where am I? What is happening? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So with different accents, I don't know if it was Bloodweaver or one of the newer ones that you've been doing, but you jumped from character to character, but they had two different accents. Like one had an accent, one didn't. How difficult is it to jump from character to character when it's quick and to get out of that dialect that you were just using? If it is at all.
Yeah, if it's a dialect I'm comfortable with, that I've done a lot of, it's much easier to switch back and forth, right? So like I've done like a, you know, RP English accent and American, and that's pretty simple. Irish, I've done a lot of, you know, so like switching from like Irish to American or Welsh to American or Scottish to American is pretty easy. When it gets tricky is when you've got people like an Irish person talking to a Scottish person talking to an English person talking to a, that's when you've multiple dialects in there that you're not used to switching between.
Yeah.
It's much like in the beginning of the book, it's very like, and then like as the book gets on, if those characters continue talking to each other, it's like you build up that muscle and it gets a little easier and you get a little bit more of a flow. It's like finding the palette and the placement and sticking with it and really clearly having that. You just have to really know the dialects and hook in.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I heard someone was talking about how different accents are in different parts of your throat.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know how to use my throat to talk. I just talk. Like, what
No, it's a really weird way of saying it, but like now that I know an Irish accent is more in the front of your mouth and it's more in the front, and like a Scottish accent, you got the glottals and it's in the back. So knowing it's in the back, you could never really confuse going back and forth Irish and Scottish because the Irish is so in the front and you've got these splashy T's that isn't it in the front, and whereas like Scottish you'll be like, you know, isn't it in the back. So like you once you learn where the placement is, it helps. Not like I'm thinking about the back of my throat, but it lives further back there, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And that's kind of what I forget who it was who was talking about it. And they did what you just kind of did, where they switched each one. And I'm like, watching their throat as if I could see it, you know? And I'm like, how are you doing that?
Or like Australian versus London, right? Like, so some of the vowels will be similar, but the placement, like Australians tend to swallow a lot of stuff, whereas in the English, it's just a different posture in the mouth. It's more forward. Their L's turn more into W's, whereas Australian, they kind of swallow their L's. Like you just kind of learn how to toggle in between them. Yeah.
I give you mad props because I could never. I could absolutely never.
It's fun. It's fun.
I did kind of want to jump back to something that you touched on earlier. And before I do, everyone that's listening right now, feel free to put your questions in the comments. And as I see them, I'll try and ask them for Amy to answer. But you were talking about how you audition, and then obviously some people have been going to you for direct jobs. Are you finding that since you've done TikTok, do you get more direct requests now, or do you still have to audition primarily for the books that you do?
So I've been kind of fortunate. I haven't had to look at ACX or auditioning on ACX. I'm happy to submit auditions, but I've just been very lucky that people have reached out to me and they go, hey, I have a book. I'd love for you to do it. what are your rates and what's your availability? And let's chat. And if they want a sample, I am so happy to provide one. But there is also that like 15-minute ACX sample baked into it, you know, that they have to give their approval on. So I'm at a point now with, I mean, I'm happy to audition, but I have been getting a lot of, I've just been kind of lucky. People going, hey, I've got a book and you're the voice. I've been watching you. I think you're the one. So, which is really nice. And I'm always, and if people ask me and I go, and my rates are maybe a little higher than they want it to be, I always tell them like, look, just because my rates are a little higher being SAG-AFTRA doesn't mean that you can't find a great narrator. There are people in different places in their narration journeys. Some of them are accepting lower rates because they want to build their portfolio. So like just because maybe my budget's a little, you know, a little out of your budget doesn't mean you have to go to AI narration, or, you know, you can still find someone within your budget. Just, you might have to look a little bit more, but it's so doable.
So do you keep a list of possible narrators that they could use that you give to them, or you just tell them, go look for, you know, there's others that you can go to? Or
yeah, they haven't really asked me for a list because I don't really know other narrators' rates. Yeah. But I do know that there are people who are like, you know, I've never done a cozy mystery and I want to do one. So I'll audition for a royalty share or royalty share plus project just so I can have an Audible cozy mystery under my belt. And that's great. And I mean, I will do that too. If there's a genre that I want to break into that no one's asking me to do, I'll do that too, you know?
Yeah. Sorry, I was blocking someone.
No.
You're asking stupid questions, just basically. I can't deal with the stupid, like, waste of time questions. I don't have the personality for it. Do you have another one?
I have.
It's a no judgment zone. No judgment. No judgment.
I have one more.
Okay.
Do you get invested more into a book, like being as a narrator, or actually when you have time to actually go and read a book that you want to sit down and read by yourself?
Yeah, I actually have a really hard time with this because I know that I don't have time to read a book twice. However, I just love getting lost in the story. So I love to like send it to my Kindle and not highlight it and not take any notes and just read it and just like read it as if I'm just for fun, because then I really get a sense of like the flow and the journey and like what the listener, like the experience the listener needs to get out of it, like the reveals, the surprise, the moments. So that's something I really struggle with. I guess the best balance for me lately has been I start reading it on Kindle and then I get maybe about 30% through and I go, okay, Amy, you don't have time to finish the whole book this way. You need to go back and you need to like annotate and highlight and do all the things and take the notes but that's my constant struggle, is how can I read the book without taking the time to write down all the notes? And because it's a lot of, you know, you have to write down every single character who speaks. And if it's a co-narration, which characters do we share? You know, so it's even more work. Yeah, that's my struggle. Really, honestly, it's the best when I can do both. And that's my preferred, is just to read it and then sit down and do all the work.
Do you find like you can't just read a book anymore without going into work mode? Because I feel like I would get stuck in work mode forever.
I find myself reading aloud sometimes. I like imagine like what the character sounds like, and I'll start like saying their lines, and I'm like, Amy. Especially when it's a book just for fun. It's like, just read the book.
I could see that happening. Thank you guys for the roses. And I saw someone said, hey, Natasha, hey, thanks for hopping on. If you guys have any questions for Amy, she's an audiobook narrator and theater actress, you can put them in the comments and we will try to get to them. We won't keep you for much longer. I know this has already been, I think we've been on for about an hour now.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys have any last questions, feel free to put them in now. But yeah, I could see just always being in work mode anytime that you have to read a book. And when I used to work as a park ranger at the beach, and now I can't go to the beach without being in work mode. Like I'm constantly being like, are those people drinking on the beach? Are those people leaving trash on the beach? Like I can't just go to the beach or go to the beach anymore.
It's a hazard of like being a theater actor too. Like I used to love going to the theater, and now I go to the theater and sometimes I'm like, that person's not a great actor. And I feel really bad about it. Because it's like,
I could do that better.
It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. But like when you become good at your job, that's all it is. You just become aware of certain things. That's all. But yeah.
What?
I dragged the puzzle piece. Sorry, we're having
Yes, that happens now in TikTok Live. They're making sure you're a human.
Yeah.
Which is really hard when I'm reading. I'm like reading and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, there's a puzzle piece on my screen? Yeah. And like during a live narration, I'd be like, sorry guys, I have to prove I'm human.
I know, it's like, do you realize that you're still talking?
Like I do lives for like 4 hours.
All right. So my last question for you is another one from our author Stacey Andrea that we did an interview with. She wanted to know, do you ever pass on a book, and what are maybe some reasons that make you pass on a book?
Yeah. Sometimes I will pass on a book if I'm not the right cultural background, if I'm not the same cultural background as the main protagonist. I really believe that like representation matters. Mm-hmm. And so I've had to say, I love your book. If I could just do every single book in the world, of course I would say yes to this book. But I shouldn't narrate every book. And I think somebody who identifies more the way this character, the protagonist, identifies would serve your book better. And that's when I have to say no, and it really hurts. Actually, I turned down my very first publisher book that way. And I was so sad. I was like, they're never going to hire me again because I said no. But I just truly believed that like, I wasn't another narrator who identifies even more and connects with it even more would serve the book better. And it always hurts a little bit, but then I know it's always the right decision. Because of course there's a part of me that's like, I want to play all the parts. I want to do all the books, but that's not the case. And I guess content sometimes. I remember one time I was offered a book that was a romance, but when I started reading it, it was clearly erotica and like clearly like no plot.
just yes,
and I was like, I'm not down for this at the moment. I'm so sorry, and I had to back out of it. But those are like the only couple of times that I've had to do that. Thankfully, most of the books have been the right fit. So
yeah. When she asked that, I was like, man, I've never thought about that being a thing. But yeah, I can't talk.
You're doing great.
I was like, yeah, I guess, so many people have different triggers and stuff like that. So I was like, I wonder if that's, or if that's something that, depending on who you're working for, if they're like, no, you have to record it no matter what. Like if that's
it is tricky. Like that's why you should always look over the script before you accept the offer. You don't have time to read the whole script. Like when you're dealing with publishers, you have to accept within like 24 hours most of the time. But you do need to like look through it. And fortunately now most places will give you trigger warnings and stuff like that. I mean, I'm kind of more of an older actor where I grew up, like I went to college in the 90s. So for me, the whole idea of not doing something because it might trigger me, that's not, for me, it's more like, I feel like a lot of things trigger me. Well, a lot of things resonate with things that have happened in my life, but maybe it's a good thing that it resonates with me because I can bring something more to the story because of it. But yeah. Most of the time it's just, if I don't, they'll offer it to me and it hurts, but an indie author will offer it to me and I'm like, but I feel like, it would be better if it was somebody with a different, who was from the background of the protagonist,
No, and I think that's super important. I love that you do that. We were talking to an author, Mershon Neisner, and her book, The Bootmaker's Wife, is based on her grandparents' story of when they lived along the Oregon Trail and stuff. And then she made a character within that called the Bee Lady. And she's got a different background, and I believe it was with the Native Americans, if I'm not mistaken. But she's actually sent it off to a tribe to look at it and make sure that everything is historically accurate and that she's not, misrepresenting them in any way. And I was like, I love that.
That is so important. I wish more people would do that. I wish more people would do that, because you don't realize, many of us are kind of insular, and we don't realize that some things might come off a certain way. And I remember sometimes you do a book, and fortunately I have a relationship with some of these indie authors, and I've been able to say, I know that you don't intend for this to come off this way, but this jumped out to me, and I know that you haven't published it yet, that it's still like you've given me this manuscript to prep, and this is what I felt reading this, or this is what I kind of got. And then they go, oh, that is not at all. Like, thank you so much for catching that. And I do think that sensitivity readers are something. And again, how can indie authors afford anything when you're self-publishing and you're doing all this stuff? But maybe sensitivity beta readers. And again, that's putting this extra onus and pressure on people. But yeah, if there's room in a budget for an editor, it would be great if there's room in the budget for a sensitivity. Just some eyes to help.
Yeah, and that's something that before that interview I had never thought about. And now anytime we hear anyone talk about it, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. I love that you do that. So with you narrating and choosing, and recognizing that you might not be a fit in that aspect, I absolutely love that.
I mean, it hurts always to say no to work, but yeah,
but
it's always the right reason. That's always the right reason.
But Shadowfeather03 asked, do you ever regret doing a narration, or is there a narration that you've done that you've regretted doing?
I mean, I wouldn't say regret, but like when I was starting out, I really had no idea what I was doing. So I would say, but you don't know what you don't know. Like I think we're always going to listen back to our earlier work and judge it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say regret. I do wish I could. I'm a perfectionist. It's an awful thing. It's something I've always been struggling with, is I understand there is no such thing as perfection. There's just like the best you can do in the moment and where you are. But sometimes I do listen to things and I go, oh, I could do that so much better now.
Yeah.
So.
All right. And then any final questions from anyone listening, go ahead and drop them in the comments and we'll start wrapping up this live. Amy, thank you so much for letting us interview you. I was so
amazing.
excited. But so everyone knows how best to support you. I believe you have a list of books that you've narrated on your TikTok link tree. Is that correct?
I do. So I've got a link. Almost all of my books are under Amelia Hugh. Now, most of them are per finished hour books. So I've already been paid for these books. So buying them doesn't necessarily help me, but it does help all of the amazing indie authors who hired me. So I'm always promoting those and supporting those authors. So most of my books are under Amelia Hugh. And I just recently started doing some under my own name, Amy Hutchins. I've got 2, soon to be 3. Under my own name. And I guess the way to support me would be follow me on TikTok and Instagram. And I've got a newsletter now, so that the next time I go live, I'm not going to send a lot of emails, but I have a newsletter. So like the next time I go live, I can say, hey, this is the next book, and this is when I'm going to start recording. And so I can send those out. So, you can support me by, signing up for my newsletter. It's all in the link tree in my bio.
Do the ratings on books that you narrate matter to you at all?
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah. Okay. Yes and no. But I've noticed that I'll get a book that has all 5-star reviews, but nobody will write a review. But then you read the reviews and it's like the 1-2-star review is all written out. And, that drives me bonkers. In a sea of 5-star reviews, the loud one, the one that you see written, is the 2-star review. So I would say, if you enjoy something, maybe, if you want to, you could write a short but sweet, I enjoyed this. That's it. Just a little review on Audible or Goodreads, because I feel like the only time my name is mentioned in Goodreads is if it's someone's and I listened to the audiobook and I hated it. Or, And so, but I know that it gets good reviews. So anyway, it would help me out tremendously. And also the indie authors as well. If you enjoy something, maybe in addition to rating it, if you could say, I liked it. Yeah. Very simple, but it goes a long way.
That is so true. How the 1-2 stars are always paragraphs. Mm-hmm. Always.
I mean, even like when you're buying something like on Amazon, you're like, oh, look, this product got 4.7, out of 5. And then you read all the reviews and you're like, but everyone hates it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Kristen. We have one more question if you're okay with answering it. They said, do you only do fiction?
So far, I've only done fiction, but that's only because no one has asked me to do nonfiction. So I am very open to nonfiction. I even have some nonfiction samples on my website. I'm very open to nonfiction. It's just a matter of an author asking me. Like, also somebody said my favorite genre is obviously fantasy, but I also love suspense and thrillers. I've done quite a few archaeological thrillers, like Dan Brown style books. So I love suspense and thrillers, and I would love to get into mystery. I've never done a mystery. I would love to. I've done a few women's fictions, lots of romance. But yeah, mystery, and I'd like to do more thriller and suspense. In addition, I mean, I'm grateful for all the books I get, but I'm just saying.
Well, if we have any mystery or thriller authors on the live right now and you need an audiobook narrator, you know the girl to go to now.
Yes. Oh, and my next live stream will be The Chain of Destiny. Did I say that right? Gosh, I hope Tam Delacour isn't on here, right? I want to say Chain of Destiny, not Chains of Destiny, but you know what? In the newsletter, I'll get it right. And I will start recording it. I haven't set the dates yet, but next week, the first week of April. So
I'm excited.
Yeah. And I do pick the evenings. Somebody asked, I do like to do it in the evenings because I live in New York City and my apartment building can be a little active during the day. New York City is a little more active during the day. So I do like to go live at night. And I've noticed that when I go live in the evenings, a lot more people can join me. So
yes. That's the active time of day for sure.
Totally.
Kristen says book club is back.
Yes. I'm so excited. I've missed you guys so much. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to chat with you and get to know you a little bit better. And I'm so excited to keep watching all of your streams and everything and just keep being a follower of yours because I love you. And we've had so much fun.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for asking me. This was so much fun. Honestly, thank you so much for asking me.
Of course. And for anyone that's just popping on, if you want to listen to the whole podcast, we are going to be editing this into our regular podcast stream. So Spotify, Patreon, Apple, Audible, all the podcast main street sites that you can go will be there. So we'll probably have that within the next week or so. And I'll send you a message whenever it's up, just in case you want to listen to it. But thank you so much, and I hope you have a great night, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for everyone for hopping on.